Okay, we have lots of parts to this lecture, so I apologize for that. But go ahead and get onto the slide where it says high school and college sports face uncertainties today. Okay, so the primary issues that are kind of arising for high school sports is the cost and the budget, changing orientations and rising expectations. So what they mean by that is there's so much emphasis now in winning and kind of to be the best. So that's definitely kind of a concern. Injuries, especially to the brain, which we touched on. Educational relevance or irrelevance. I mean, people are really starting to question, are these important for us to have? Gender inequality, because that's still very much occurring at the high school level, and then opportunities for students with disabilities. And, we'll get into that here in just a second. Cost and containment and budget of and inequality. So I know there's a lot of information on this slide, and I just want to highlight two of the points there. The cost of high school and college programs have increased far beyond the rate of inflation and academic expenditures. Okay, and budget and program inequality has become so great that it creates difficulty in scheduling games. So what it's saying is that some schools are capable of doing a lot of different things and travels and stuff, and other schools are not. So then scheduling games has really become a challenge. Go ahead to the next slide. So changing orientations and rising expectations. So number one, high school and college players today increasingly, come from, it's all about me. And club and youth and, the special treatment in varsity sports. And, as a college coach, I can tell you firsthand that the attitude, it's all about me, has really been something that we've struggled with at this level. And, just this mentality that it's not about the team, it's about what I'm going to get out of it. And it's just because this is the environment that athletes have, really become accustomed to. Parents of athletes today are more directly involved in their sports career of their child. Again, we're seeing this increasingly. Parents are paying a lot of money for their son or daughter to participate in athletics. And, once, they're paying money, they want to know their investment is worth it. And they want to know that they're, really getting their money's worth. And so they want to have a say in what's happening with their child's experience. And even at the college level, we're getting that, where parents feel that their young daughter or son, that they should have a voice in it. Athletes are becoming more assertive about how they should be treated, and their health and time commitment to the sports. And I see this as overall a positive thing, that they are voicing their opinions. When I played, you didn't. There was no opinion. Your opinion didn't matter, and nobody was going to ask you for it. You were just going to do what the coaches told you, which then at times really puts athletes in a dangerous situation. And, there were some kind of crazy things that went on. And now athletes have a voice, which is good. But, at the same time, there can become some blurred lines there, where athletes are constantly feeling that they get a say in what's occurring. But I overall see it as a really positive thing. Go ahead to the next slide. So injuries, especially to the brain, obviously concussions are a huge hot topic right now. Just in general, hockey, soccer, cheerleading is a big one, and then obviously football. And what are we going to do about it? Because it's something that's very scary. It's not going away. It's only getting worse. And what can we do to prevent these things? And this whole slide goes on, to talk about what kind of impact they're having and what schools are trying to do, but it's something that really is a liability issue, and it's very dangerous, and there's really not an answer as of yet. Go ahead to the next slide. So education irrelevance or relevance, as we talked about, the assumption, it's just assumed that it's a good thing, and it's not always a good thing. Tensions between core missions and universities and commercial value of high profile sports. The result is athletic departments have turned into profit seeking programs with diminished educational relevance. Go ahead to the next slide. Students versus athletes, who really does matter? Okay, at the University of Texas, non-football athletes receive about 7,000 hours of tutoring a year, members of the football team receive 12 to 15,000 hours a year. So, I mean, right there, that kind of example shows that the athletes matter more than the general students. Go ahead to the next slide. Gender inequality, okay, this is a high issue. At the high school level, there's many districts that have never had gender equality across their schools. Only a handful of colleges and universities have consistently gender or equality in their athletic programs, okay? None of the offending schools have ever been fined by the U.S. Department of Justice. So there's a lot of things that are still going on in a lot of colleges that are not fair or right for women athletics. Women are by far underrepresented in all leadership positions, in professional staff, so administration and coaches and things of that nature. There has been no major positive change over the last decade. Since 1999, men have been hired nearly 75% of job openings for women's college sports teams, 75%. Women coach only 2 to 3.5% of men's teams, usually gendered mixed teams. So when they say gendered mixed, we're talking about like a track and field team where you have both men's and women's. So it was interesting. I was talking with another coach who is very passionate about Title IX and changing some things and getting the conversation rolling. And she's been interviewing athletic directors. And, part of the problem with this, though, is that women also don't apply for these jobs. And, we need to get education out there to, push women to apply for situations that, that they are qualified for. That's one of the hurdles with that. Go ahead to the next slide. So, here's a thing, it's in your book, a little cartoon, if there weren't, for our football team, the women's team would have no funding on this campus. Well, I mean, again, if you're going to have that mentality, okay, then, really you would have to ask yourself then, like, who's paying for the choir, who's paying for the student government, things like that. I mean, it's really a simple mind frame to kind of place that men's sports pay for women. So here's a breakdown since 2012. So it's a little bit old. We got 5 years. I tried to find something a little bit more recent, and I couldn't. That broke it down this nicely. But here's the percentage of female head coaches in the most 10 popular sports. So if we look at women's soccer, we have grown actually in women's soccer. We're one of the only ones that are positive. Everybody else has been negative. There's been a huge decrease in volleyball, in women's basketball, obviously softball. There's been a huge decline, track and field, and swimming and diving. So, to be in the one sport where we have increased, by 2%, which is not much, but it is an increase, is a positive thing. Go to the next slide. Here's the pattern. For athletic directors, 71% of athletic directors are white males. Okay, 71%. I mean, that's quite a bit. The other large chunk is white females. Okay, then from there, as you can see, black males, black females, and then other minority and other minority females is 0.6%. So overall, very, very low. And then in general, 81% of athletic directors are male and 18% are female. Go ahead to the next slide. So since 2000, there's been no progress in closing the gap between boys and girls in high school sports. As you can see here, the different millions of the differences, 1.23 million in 2014 and 15. Again, and there could be a lot of different reasons for that, but, there's still significant amount of boys playing over girls. Go ahead to the next slide. Here's a gender inequality from the NCAA. Overall student bodies at schools, women are, almost 10% more women at most colleges. Total number of athletes, over, again, the men are over. Shared scholarship money, men have more. Shared of recruiting money, I mean, that's really crazy to look at that, how much more recruiting money males get than females. And the shared operation budget still there's huge discrepancy there. And then the shared of head coach's salary, which has been a hot topic in general that women make less than men, and it's clear by the statistic as well from 2014 that head women coaches are making significantly less than head men coaches. Go ahead to the next slide. Opportunities, students with disabilities. And, this is a really interesting topic to think about. What opportunities are there for students in high schools to participate in sports? And this would be an awesome discussion to have as a class, because some of you might have had some experiences that your schools have provided. My high school did not have anything to provide. High school principals, athletic directors, and coaches want to know, what does inclusion mean? How do we include them in these sports, and what does that look like? Go ahead to the next slide. So adaptive sports for high school, basketball, bowling, floor hockey, soccer, they're able to adapt them so students can play them. Only 0.7% or fewer than 130 schools out of 18,000 high schools have, para varsity sports. And that's pretty sad when you think about it, that there's that little opportunities for individuals to play. There are 7.71 million varsity athletes, but fewer than 9,000 students play on adaptive teams, and half of those play 3 sports: bowling, softball, and soccer. Go ahead to the next slide. Issues in high school sport programs. As school and coaches strive for state rankings, teams increasingly require massive commitments, year-round specialization in sports, and training at the club participation. So basically what's happening now, these high school teams want to do so well, they're being forced to specialize right away. And I'm sure some of you have had pressure from your high school sports, or coaches when you were playing, don't go out for basketball because I want you to play indoor soccer. Don't go out for baseball because we're going to be doing, basketball all summer long. So, which is just crazy. As budgets fail to meet expectations of parents, and community boosters, they raise funds for programs, but they want to participate in managing them. So essentially, the people who are giving the money want to have a say. Go on to the next slide. Issues in college sports. So there's scandals and violations of rules. There's so many that we could talk about. There's lots of lawsuits going on. Pay for play, which is a hot topic. This is an issue forcing the NCAA to make significant changes. Again, would love to hear your opinion on this. Do you think athletes should get paid to play at the big time level, and why or why not? Distorted racial and ethnic priorities. Often African Americans are valued, as revenue producing individuals and not as general students. African Americans are recruited to play football and men's and women's basketball, but little other sports. Why does this happen? And we've talked about being able to participate. So, why is this happening? And this graph really kind of shows you how the huge discrepancy. Go ahead to the next slide. Sources of isolation for Black athletes. So they, are stereotyped on campus already that they must be an athlete if they are at the school. The amount of time athletes must devote to their sports. Campus activities often fail to represent the interest and experience of Black students, making them feel unwelcomed. Go to the next slide. Black athletes feeling unwelcome may withdraw from the community as a whole. White students who've lacked experience in racial diversity groups may not interact freely with the Black athletes. And tensions are created when white students conclude that Black athletes have privileges over them, and that it makes it easy. Go ahead to the next slide. So that was our last slide there. Again, it's a really long chapter. There's so much to talk about. And, if you have any questions, let me know.